Hey, what's up guys? In this video, I'm going to show you how I convert a denture. So implants have been placed already, multi-unit abutments are on, healing abutments are on, and now I take the denture that I'm delivering, so the denture that I'm using for my conversion, I put some bite registration inside of it, and I seat it in the patient's mouth. And so that's going to help me see exactly where my implants are located relative to my denture. So see, we look at the underside of this denture and you see that the bite registration clearly marked where each implant site is. So now I'm going to go with this little burr, and I'm just, I had actually just like marked through the bite registration, like where the implants are. And now I switched to a bigger burr and we're making like a bigger clearance. And we're actually just going to go ahead and burr straight through the denture so that the denture has 4 little holes in it, or like, I guess they're kind of big holes actually. Here I'm going to show you what it looks like right now. So these are fairly large holes, and now I have to try this back into the patient's mouth to make sure that there's enough clearance around each healing abutment. So this is actually Alvin because he is a conversion pro. So we're just checking here that the denture has enough clearance. I try to get like millimeter, 2 millimeters of clearance all the way around, so circumferentially. And we're checking the bite too. And so the bite is off, right? And so sometimes if the denture is binding on one of the healing abutments, it's going to throw the bite completely off. So right here, we're going to adjust a little bit on the buccal side. See, now we adjusted that acrylic a little bit. And so theoretically, it should be better now, right? So we have the patient bite down and the bite's still off. So if that ever happens, what you can do is just put some bite registration inside of the denture, put it in the patient's mouth, have them bite down, and just manually reposition the bite to where you want it to be. Reposition it, and then hold it. And then once that bite registration sets up, it'll like index that bite for you and index the way it's supposed to seat. The only thing is that now you have to go back with a blade and remake those little access holes through the bite registration material. And now the most important part to this is, well, first, don't like mess up your I guess the registration that you made with your bite registration. So like don't like break up your whole bite registration. You gotta be really careful just to make those holes, and you want to make sure that you have access to that acrylic. See that acrylic right there? You want to make sure you have like 3 millimeters of acrylic or more to attach the new acrylic to. So now we're going to throw the temporary cylinders on in the patient's mouth. They're really nice and have a lot of retentive features. And I'm trying it back on, and damn, so it's a bad occlusion again, right? But this time it's because that temporary cylinder in the back is too tall. Sometimes a temporary cylinder is too tall when you don't do enough bone reduction. So keep that in mind too. You might have not done enough bone reduction, or you might have a multi-unit that's too tall. Anyway, I just shortened it up real quick with a stone. And so now I put the temp cylinders on. They have PVS inside of them to help protect the access hole, because the last thing you want is acrylic getting into your access holes. That's happened to me before. Anyway, I put a little bit of acrylic around the temp cylinder. You got to be really careful because you don't want it to actually seep into the tissues and lock on around your multi-unit. So be super careful. Use a rubber dam if you're not super experienced at it. Anyway, I put the denture on. Here you see me kind of like messing with it because the bite registration had like flipped or something. But anyway, now I take a Monoject syringe and I really quickly squirt the rest of that acrylic around the temporary cylinders. That acrylic is going to set up with the acrylic that I had initially put around the cylinders. I'm going to do a quick swipe, and I'm going to have the patient bite down all the way, just so I can reconfirm that it's at the occlusion that I want. So I have the patient open up just a couple seconds after she bit down. That's super important because sometimes your acrylic can set and lock onto the opposing teeth. All right, so now I'm going to let it set up. I use some pretty fast set acrylic, and so this is just like 4 minutes later. I go and I pop off the PVS, and sometimes I have to go fishing for it, but actually this one right here in the front, I have to go fishing for it with a perio probe or something. Anyhow, it's ready to come out. I use my little manual driver just to take out all the screws in the cylinder in the back. I wasn't able to take out the screw because I had adjusted that cylinder shorter, so the screw won't come out, but that's fine. In the front, I actually got some acrylic that was kind of constricting the access hole, so I just used a little crown prep burr, opened that up a little bit, and then it came off super easy. And so now we're going to take off the prosthesis. So then healing abutments go back on those implants. This is the underside of that denture. Here you see the bite registration pieces. You see the acrylic that binded to those temporary cylinders. And remember, we removed the that bite registration base index that we made. Here it is right here. We removed it. And now we have to just clean that underside carefully, so that way we can fill the rest of those voids with acrylic and reduce the weak points. So you want to make sure you have acrylic filling all of those voids. Otherwise, your temporary denture is going to be weak and it's going to break. And breakages is actually a really common complication with these. So now it's time to put a little protective cap on here. This is actually my first time using one of these. My Neodent rep just sent it to me, so I figured I'd put it to use. And yeah, I think there's we just dropped this guy. So I'm gonna blame that on Alvin, but he's actually really good. So anyway, those just go on the end of that temp cylinder, and that gets screwed down and makes the whole process a lot easier, so you're not worried about damaging your platform while you're making all of your adjustments. And so now we're going to put it on all the rest of the implants as well. Alright, so we got 2 down, putting the rest on. There you go. That's all the protective caps on the temp cylinders. So now it's time to mix acrylic. So this acrylic that I'm using, it's called Unifast Trad. It's super fast. I really like it because you're usually adding a lot of acrylic in increments, and it can really slow down your process. This is about the consistency that we like, and so Alvin's putting it now on into this Monoject syringe, and he's going to use that to fill up all of the voids inside the denture right now. We're just doing this with the major voids, so just for the bulk of it, and we're going to be fine-tuning it afterwards with just a little like salt and pepper technique. We're going to be dipping in powder, dipping in liquid, and then using that as our fine-tuning method. Almost done here, just a little bit more to go before that guy goes into the pressure cooker. So we got some boiling water here. That guy gets dropped into a pressure cooker. We close it up, add the air pressure to it, and then I'm just going to leave it sitting in there for 10 minutes. 10 minutes is done. Oh man, it's hot. Alvin thought he could just reach in there with his fingers, and he can because he's hardcore like that. So anyway, the acrylic's all set up, and now we're going to go with a salt and pepper technique, just dipping it in monomer and dipping it in powder, and then just touching up all of those little tiny voids around the temp cylinder, just letting all that acrylic just like drip down into those retentive spots. And that's one of the reasons why I really like this temporary cylinder. Actually, it's got a lot of grooves on it, so it makes me a lot more comfortable that it's going to pick up well. So we spend a good amount of time making sure that there's no voids, that there's no pores, and we do that first, and then we're going to cut off all the flanges and start making this thing look more like a bridge. Alright, so we have to make sure to do this on the other side as well. So there's some voids on the occlusal surface. You can see that on those molars, I just knocked out the occlusal morphology on them. We're not going to be wanting any occlusion past that last temporary cylinder anyway, so I'm totally okay with that. And anyway, we're going to be cutting off that last molar anyhow. So right now we're just taking that disc and just making all of our big cuts with that. After we make all our big cuts, so cutting off the flanges with this. So the reason I use this to cut off flanges is actually because if you take a burr and you try to burr it all off, it just makes a lot of smoke, a lot of dust. I'd rather just use this disc. And now for the fine tuning, we're just using this burr to try to make this have a more cleansable shape. But the thing is, you have to balance that between having a weak prosthesis. So if you make it too thin, you're going to make it more likely to fracture. And so what I do is I'll leave it off of the tissue a little bit, and I'm trying to balance between having it be convex and strong as well. So I'm going to, after this, we're going to polish it super highly and leave it sitting off the tissue just a bit. So having these protective caps is really nice because for this part we can be a little bit quicker and adjust a little bit easier around those cylinders without being worried that we're gonna nick them. All right, so now I'm going to use a smaller burr and I'm going to go around the around where the temporary cylinder is. We relieve a little bit more here because we want to make sure that the tissue is not going to keep the prosthesis from seating fully. That's a common complication and you want to avoid it. While that's going on, I take a closed tray impression so I can send it to the lab and I'll have a verification jig ready to take my first restorative appointment impression. This is the finished restoration right here, and we've glazed the underside and this is ready to deliver.